What is up, guys? Greg Ehrenberg here from Stokastic.com. We've got all of our new football tools set and ready to go for the football season, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a preview for tonight's NFL Showdown slate. So, going to be doing this for the Thursday and Monday night slates, where I'm going to run sims for the DraftKings and for the FanDuel slate, and we'll check out some of the results here, see what some of the top projected lineups are, some of the players we're getting the most of, things along those lines. So, I've actually already built out some DraftKings lineups and simulated them. So we'll look at the results. And then on screen, I'm actually going to take you through everything from start to finish for FanDuel so we can see how everything works out. One thing of note is that we do have the uncertainty with Travis Kelce for tonight in our projections right now and in our ownership projections. We have Travis Kelce projected out for now. So all these lineups are built under the assumption that Kelce is not going to suit up for the Chiefs today. If something ends up changing, then obviously it's going to really alter some of the results here, but not something we typically expect for week one of the NFL season is for a massive player like Travis Kelce to be questionable for the first primetime football game. Something else of note as well, if you guys want to sign up for our NFL package, there's a link below in the description box. When you sign up using that link, you're going to get 15% off, and our data packages now come with everything. Ownership projections, player projections, that stuff's always been a given, but now stuff like our contest generators, you could build lineups right on our site. We've also got the contest simulator. This is all included in our NFL package. So if you want to sign up for that, 15% off when you sign up using that link below. But looking at the lineups that I've built here for DraftKings, by the way, the number one overall projected lineup I got. So how this works, if you guys aren't familiar with it, is I did build out 10,000 lineups in our contest generator. Then I uploaded them to the Sims tool. They play against each other 40,000 times. And then based on those results, this is my overall top projected lineup. I'm actually going to favorite the top 150 here. So then we can look at some of the exposures of the lineups. But my overall top projected lineup, given the information we have of this morning, it is Jared Goff at captain. And then we have Amon-Ra St. Brown, David Montgomery, Isaiah Pacheco, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Khalif Raymond showing up in the rest spots. So this lineup actually heavy lion stack and actually does not include Patrick Mahomes, which is going to be, somewhat surprising because when we look at my lineups in a second, you see that Patrick Mahomes is in a ton of them. But the way that this is going to work here, by the way, in terms of my top projected lineup, I mean by simulated ROI. So this is the lineup that had the best ROI when all the lineups played against each other, not necessarily the one that was projected for the most fantasy points, because the lineup projected for the most fantasy points was Mahomes, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jared Goff, Khalif Raymond, and Noah Gray. Something of note as well is that we do have a way to project how many dupes that there's going to be in lineups, which does alter the overall projected ROI of these lineups. So for instance, my lineup here that had the second most projected fantasy points wasn't one of my top 150 lineups. And in part, that's because of the amount of times that it was duped. This lineup projects well enough that it actually does end up in one of my, being one of my top 150 projected lineups in terms of ROI, even though it was duped a bunch of times. But anyway, sorted by simulated ROI, this was my overall best projected ROI lineup. And if we look at some of the exposures to the individual players, let's see what we ended up getting to in terms of leverage and then also in terms of players that I'm underweight to the field here. Player I overall have the most of, and yeah, this is going to be, a little bit blurry to some point for showdown single game purposes, just because you could play players in multiple spots. You see, like, I have Patrick Mahomes in 45% of my lineups as a flex and 44.7% as a captain. So I am underweight to him in the flex spot, but in the captain spot, I'm well overweight to the field on Patrick Mahomes. But overall, even though he wasn't in my number one overall projected lineup, this is the player that I get the most exposure to because nearly 90% exposure to Patrick Mahomes when we include the flex and the captain exposure that I have to him. As far as the running backs for the Detroit Lions, we've got David Montgomery, we've got Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm getting to more of Gibbs here, who's actually in about half of my lineups in the flex spot. Let's see if we could find Gibbs as the captain. And here, and then also got to 6.7% exposure to Jahmyr Gibbs as a captain. So consider Gibbs to be a core play, Jared Goff as well. And then this is something that's really going to be impacted by the by the absence of Travis Kelce. If he is indeed out, this is one less pay-up option we have for tonight. And then also, it's opening up some other value plays. So some of these cheap wideouts for the Chiefs, we could expect them to have more target share. And then also, we've got a player like Noah Gray, who really quickly becomes one of the top value plays on the slate. So we have Noah Gray currently projected for 20.5% ownership, and I got to him in nearly 30% in exposure to him in the flex spot here. So really good source of salary savings on Noah Gray and other value options that we're getting to a lot of here. Khalif Raymond on the Detroit side. So Khalif Raymond is also in about 30% of lines, actually 29.3% of both of them as far as the flex goes. Number one most rostered captain, that is Patrick Mahomes by a mile. Second most rostered captain is Amon-Ra St. Brown. So overall, these lineups looking very much like stars and scrubs lineups if we're going to be taking Travis Kelce out of the mix, because we're getting extra value plays, and then it's just common sense to spending up for players like Patrick Mahomes, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jared Goff. So stars and scrubs for tonight, and looking pretty strong over on FanDuel. So hopefully nothing changes dramatically with the status of Travis Kelce. The worst scenario that we could possibly get is that we get one of these things where it's like he's going to try to play and then he ends up playing like 15 snaps. And we'll see. As of the information we have right now, even if Kelce is in, I'm most apt to not end up playing him tonight. Let's build out some lineups for FanDuel now. I could show you guys what this looks like in the contest generator. So making lineups for FanDuel, make sure I have the right slate selected. And by the way, so right now we have the main slate and the Thursday night showdown slate in here. This is going to include all of the slates before the end of the weekend. So stuff like the afternoon slate, and then also like Sunday night football, Monday night football, that'll all be in here as well. But let's build some lineups out for FanDuel now, and you guys will see how quickly the lineup, the contest generator could build out 10,000 lineups. Usually takes 60-ish seconds or so. And, you know, not that I want to sit here and do the video and just have you guys watch this build out the lineups, but thought that it was a good way to at least show you guys the utility of it and how quickly we could have lineups built out. And then other things you could do from the contest generator here is, let's say that there's a player that ended up in lineups that you want to get less of, because in general, you do want to make these lineups somewhat aligned with what or at least as closely aligned as the field's ownership as possible, because that's going to give you the most accurate results when you go to the pre-contest simulator, is just by having a field that's representative of what the field is going to do. And then that is going to make sure that when your lineups are being simulated, the top overall projected plays and top overall projected lineups can go more towards the top of your projected ROI. So if I'm looking at this, I might be inclined to decrease some of the captain exposure to Patrick Mahomes and then increase some of the flex exposure, just so my lineups are a little bit closer to what the field is doing. So I'm going to do a little bit of a down boost to Mahomes in the captain spot. I'm going to upgrade him a little bit in the flex spot so that we get lineups a little bit more in line with the field, because that was really heavy on his captain ownership, a little bit less than the flex spot on FanDuel. So do one more run with that, and then we'll throw these to the contest simulator and see what the results end up being. And it is going to be super hard to avoid Patrick Mahomes over on FanDuel, especially because of that absence of Travis Kelce and just the lack of options to pay up for. But yeah, here we go. So after we changed some of that, we got to much closer exposure, especially in the captain spot, to Patrick Mahomes relative to the field. Now let's go and simulate the lineup. So you just click on this button and then it takes you over to the FanDuel, and then you could change the payout structure. So whatever contest you guys are playing in, select the payout structure that most mimics the contest you're in. So if you're playing in something that's flat and has a 10% payout, you could do that. And then something that's really top heavy, which is typically the case for Showdown, I'm actually going to select 30% due to that. And then you'll see my DraftKings simulations are still in here, but they're about to be overwritten by the FanDuel ones. And then also, after you favorite your top lineups, you could export them, upload them to FanDuel and DraftKings. But here we go. Let's see what we end up getting to on FanDuel and how it compares to what we got to on DraftKings. My inclination is that we're going to get to a ton of Patrick Mahomes, just as we did over on the DK slate. But one thing that I'm kind of interested to see here is, how are the value options going to differ? Because a lot of times we don't need punt plays in the same way on FanDuel that we do on DraftKings. But here we go. Favorite of the top 150 lineups. My overall top projected lineup in terms of simulated ROI: Patrick Mahomes, Sky Moore, Jared Goff, Isaiah Pacheco, and Noah Gray. So we are still getting to some of these value plays here. And then if we look at the most duped lineups on FanDuel, FanDuel is way more concentrated on dupes than DraftKings, just because DraftKings allows us for a little bit more flexibility with the captain spot, changing salaries. So something of interest here is, you notice that when I sort my lineups by the ones that were duped the most, basically none of these duped lineups are showing up in my top 150, which just shows what the value is of being unique on FanDuel when so many lineups will be duped a bunch of times. Getting back to top simulated ROI here. Let's see. Yeah, Mahomes is the MVP in pretty much all of my top projected lineups. And now what's differentiating them? Looks like a lot of salary left on the table. So this one uses all of the salary. This one does. But by and large part, my top projected lineups on FanDuel are leaving a good amount of salary on the table. A lot of them 1,500, even more on some of them. Like, see this lineup, which I wasn't duped at all. It had Patrick Mahomes, Sky Moore, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Noah Gray, left $4,000 in salary on the table, but still was one of my 10 or so highest projected ROI lineups. Let's look at exposures. Yeah, no shock here. Like we were kind of thinking was going to end up happening. Patrick Mahomes, 86.7% exposure to him in the captain spot. So just all of the Patrick Mahomes as a captain. I wonder who's filling the other spots. So if you want to get away from Patrick Mahomes, the captain I'm getting the second most exposure to here is Jared Goff, the third most Amon-Ra St. Brown, followed by Jahmyr Gibbs. But yeah, I mean, if I have 86.7% Patrick Mahomes in the captain, stands to reason that there's just not going to be a whole lot of other captain options that show up. As far as the flex plays go, Noah Gray, we are getting to him in 45% of lineups. He's projected for 19% ownership on FanDuel. And then followed by Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So yeah, all this Noah Gray exposure really does allow us to pay up for a lot of these other options and go stars and scrubs also on FanDuel. As far as leverage goes, who are we underweight to the field to? So maybe this isn't fair to say underweight to the field on Patrick Mahomes, but I'm not getting to a ton of him in the flex spot with all the exposure primarily being to him in the captain spot for us over on FanDuel. Players that we are underweight to is other captains. So Jahmyr Gibbs, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Pacheco, David Montgomery, same deal. If we're getting to a lot of Patrick Mahomes in the captain, we're going to be underweight to these other guys as captains. Flex plays that we're underneath the field on: Sam Laporta, Kadarius Toney, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Those are some players we came in a little bit underweight to the field to. And then one more look again at some of the most rostered players. Other cheap options on FanDuel are getting to a good amount as salary saving plays. Sky Moore is one. And then also as a kicker here, Harrison Butker showing up in 22% of lineups. So a little bit of an overview of some of the players that I'm getting the most of when I run my initial lineups through the sims here that we have over at Stokastic.com. And if you guys want access to all of the tools that we have over at the site, use the link below. 15% off the first time you sign up. Also, before you leave, do me a favor, guys, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and good luck tonight.